Hey everyone, what's going on? Christopher the video game historian here, and with Battlefield 5 now out for everyone for the past 2 or 3 weeks or so, I've been hearing a lot of criticism as to whether or not the game lacks content. I've seen the argument made on Twitter, Reddit, Discord, and even on the official forums, and thought I would take a look at what kind of content the game does offer and how it stacks up against previous titles. Now for this video, I'll put Battlefield 5 up against Battlefield 1, 4, and Bad Company 2, comparing maps, primary and secondary weapons, gadgets, game modes, and vehicles. Now to start off, let's start off with the maps. Battlefield 5 released with 8 maps: Hamada, Aerodrome, Arras, Twisted Steel, Narvik, Fjell, Rotterdam, and Devastation. While Battlefield 1 had 9 maps upon its release, being Sanquet and Scar, Amiens, Suez, Sinai Desert, Fjell Fortress, Ballroom Bliss, Argonne Forest, Monte Grappa, and Empire's Edge, while Battlefield 4 and Bad Company 2 had 10 maps at launch as well, and the maps for those two are listed on the screen. Now Battlefield 1 did get a 10th map a month or two after its release with Giant Shadow, and Battlefield 5 will be doing the same with a nice map called Panzersturm in the upcoming patch. But since they are not day one content, I am not including them in the list. As far as game modes go, both Battlefield 5 and 1 will launch with 6 game modes, those being Conquest, Domination, Team Deathmatch, and Operations, as well as War Pigeons and Rush on Battlefield 1, and Breakthrough and Frontlines on Battlefield 5. Battlefield 4 would actually have the most out of these titles, with 7 distinct game modes, those being Conquest, Domination, Obliteration, Defuse, Team Deathmatch, Rush, and Squad Deathmatch. Finally, Bad Company 2 will only have 4 game modes at its launch, the least of these 4 titles, with Rush, Conquest, Squad Rush, and Squad Deathmatch. Again, a 5th game mode was released later on called Onslaught, and was a co-op horde type of game with a squad of 4 against waves of NPC bots. Now Battlefield 5 is going to be getting Rush, Firestorm, and Combined Arms very shortly over the course of the next few months, but since it's not day one content, they will not be included in this video. Now I'll get to the weapons in just a minute, but before I do, just a few notes on the classes and factions within these games. As for classes go, each game will represent 4 with the exception of Battlefield 1. Battlefield 1 will actually have the most classes to play from, with a total of 7, including Assault, Medic, Support, and Scout. We also have the Tanker and Pilot classes, the Elite Pickup classes, and Cavalry. As for the factions, Battlefield 1 will again have the most with 6, including the Americans, British, Italians, Germans, Austro-Hungarians, and the Ottomans as playable factions. Battlefield 4 will have 4 with the US, Russians, Chinese, and the Pan-Asian Coalition, while both Bad Company 2 and Battlefield 5 will keep it simple with only 2. The US and Russians in the former, and the Allies and Axis in the latter. Alright, now on to the good stuff. Let's start with the gadgets and work our way up to the vehicles. In terms of gadgets, I broke this down into 2 groups: grenades and class gadgets. As far as grenades, each game, with the exception of Bad Company 2, which only has 1 kind of grenade, has 7 total hand grenades to choose from. Now technically, Battlefield 5 actually has 6 grenades with 1 throwing knife, and if you want to get even more technical, both Battlefield 1 and 5 do have an extra grenade, 1 specific to the Axis and 1 specific to the Allies. But since the Frag and Stielhandgranate work the same, they are technically counted as 1 for the purposes of this video. Now, I did do the same thing when counting the class gadgets. Some items like the rifle grenade in Battlefield 1 and 5 or the tripwire mines in Battlefield 1 are only counted as 1 item, despite it having multiple variants. For example, while in Battlefield 1 the rifle grenades can shoot smoke, frag, or HE grenades, they are still part of the same gadget family, and thus only counted once. Getting into it, Battlefield 4 will still continue to have the most gadgets available at 29. While Battlefield 1 has 18, Battlefield 5 has 15, and Bad Company 2 is in last with 13 individual gadgets. Now, while I did count things like the tripwire mines as 1 item, despite the variants, I did count the ammo health crates separate from the ammo health pouches, since they technically perform differently. I guess you can make the argument that The rifle grenades all perform differently and should be counted as individual gadgets, but for the purposes of this video, this is how I did it, and it's just to keep it all simple and consistent. Alright now on to the meat of the Battlefield games, the actual weapons. See, I told you we'd get here in just a minute. Again, I divide this category into melee, sidearms, and primary weapons, and let's start with the melee weapons. Battlefield 5 currently has 11 melee weapons available, and that includes the 3 from the campaign war stories. Meanwhile, Battlefield 1 upon release had 16 melee weapons, while Battlefield 4 had 9 and Bad Company 2 had only 1, being the combat knife. Now, at the time of release, not all 16 melee weapons were available to use in Battlefield 1, as 2 were locked behind random puzzle pieces you got in the battle packs. But even taking that into consideration, and taking the Sawtooth knife and Bartek bludgeon out, Battlefield 1 still had more with 14. As for sidearms, this is where it starts to get a little complicated. Currently in Battlefield 5, we have 7 sidearms to choose from, which only beats out Bad Company 2, which had 5. Battlefield 4 will have been released with 13, and Battlefield 1 was released with 18. Though in Battlefield 1, each class had 3 specific sidearms specific to that class that you could choose from, and at any one time, you only had access to 9, 6 of which were all-class pistols. I'm unsure if it was like that in Battlefield 4 or if all the sidearms were available for all the classes. In Bad Company 2 and Battlefield 5, all sidearms are available for all classes at any given time. Now for the more complicated stuff, the primary weapons. Battlefield 5 has 30 weapons in the game across 4 classes. Both the Assault and Support classes have 8 weapons, while the Scout and Medic have only 7. This is technically more per class than Battlefield 1, which had 30 weapons scattered across 5 classes, with each class having 6 weapons available to them. Now this is where it gets a little bit more complicated, as Battlefield 1 introduced a variant system, so nearly every weapon, minus the tanker pilot weapons and the level 10 weapons, had 3 variants to them, and combined increased the total number of weapons to 71. Now this title also had elite classes, which were pickup items across the map and each had their own specific weapon. In total, Battlefield 1 either had 34 primary weapons or 75, depending on how you look at it. Battlefield 4 also had pickup weapons, and in fact they had 6, but they also had 62 primary weapons spread out across 4 classes, with a handful of them being available to all classes. Now Battlefield 4 did not have a variant system, so this was 62 individual weapons for each of the classes. Finally, Bad Company 2 upon its release launched with 37 weapons, the majority of which were brought back from Bad Company 1. In fact, nearly all of them, with the exception of the all-kit weapons, were brought back from the previous game. Now, Bad Company 2 also had the Spec Act weapons available to the M16, UMP45, MG3, and the M95, but considering that these were just different skins for weapons already in the game, they're not to be counted. Alright, almost done now, and this is the last topic to go over, which is vehicles. Let's start with the transport vehicles, and then we'll move to the assault. With the transport ones, Battlefield 5 has just 5 transport cars, while Battlefield 1 has 8 armored cars and sidecars plus 1 boat for a total of 9. Battlefield 4 on the other hand will have a total of 11 transport vehicles, 7 of which were light transports and 4 being naval craft. Finally, in Bad Company 2, when that launched, it came with 2 naval craft boats and 6 light transports for a total of 8. Now let's actually get into the actual war machines of these games. In Battlefield 5, there are a total of 23 different vehicles in the game, with each side having their own vehicles to play around with. The Allies have 5 tanks plus 5 aircrafts and can also call in a Churchill Crocodile tank as well as a Universal Carrier for reinforcements, while the Axis have 4 tanks, 5 aircrafts, and can call in a Sturmtiger tank and an SDF 251 half-track as reinforcements. In Battlefield 1, vehicles operate under the same variant system as the weapons, and as such each type of vehicle had 3 different variants. In terms of individual vehicles, variants not included, Battlefield 1 had 4 tanks, 1 horse, 3 behemoths, and technically 3 different types of planes, an assault, bomber, and fighter plane, though in reality there were actually 10 different models of aircraft, which I counted separately. So all in all, there were technically 18 assault vehicles in Battlefield 1. As for Battlefield 4, this game will have the most at 25, with 7 helicopters, 7 jets, and 11 tanks and infantry fighting vehicles. Finally, Bad Company 2 had the least, with only 10 vehicles, those being 5 tanks and 4 helicopters, plus 1 unmanned UAV, which could also act as a flying bomb to take out the MCOMs in Rush very easily. Now before I wrap up this video, I just want to quickly recap. Now Battlefield 5 currently has 8 maps, 6 game modes, 4 classes, 15 class gadgets, 7 grenades, 30 primary weapons, 7 sidearms, 11 melees, 5 transport cars, 23 vehicles, and 2 factions. Battlefield 1 had 9 maps, 6 game modes, 7 classes, 18 class gadgets, 7 grenades, 30 primary weapons, 4 elite pickups, 18 sidearms, 16 melees, 9 transport vehicles, 18 assault vehicles, and 6 factions. Battlefield 4 would have 10 maps, 7 game modes, 5 classes, 29 class gadgets, 7 grenades, 62 primary weapons, 6 pickup weapons, 9 sidearms, 11 transport vehicles, 25 assault vehicles, and 4 factions. Finally, Bad Company 2 will have 10 maps, 4 game modes, 13 class gadgets, 1 grenade, 37 primary weapons, 5 sidearms, 1 melee weapon, 8 transport vehicles, 10 assault vehicles, and 2 factions. Now even though I wanted to, I decided not to cover the optics and placements or features like dog tags, emblems, medals, and ribbons that each game had, as that would just get into nitpicky territory. Now comparing all the games together, with the numbers that I just showed you, it certainly does seem that Battlefield 5 lacks content, especially when compared to a game like Battlefield 4 that was so filled with content it was bursting at the seams. It's hard not to be disappointed, but when compared to Battlefield 1 and Bad Company 2, a game that is nearing 10 years of age, Battlefield 5 seems to be in line with the average amount of content for a Battlefield game. Now, if I didn't think that this video would be as long as it was, I would have included Battlefield 2, 3, and Hardline onto this list. Maybe I will once Battlefield 5 is at the end of its life cycle and we've had all the DLC we're going to get. Until then, from this list, what are your opinions? Do you think Battlefield 5 lacks content? Do you think it should have launched with more? Do you hope that we will get a decent amount of content through the Tides of War live service? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel and leave a like if you enjoyed this lengthy video. Until next time, I'll see you all on the battlefield.